You've had the opportunity to do work for, some of the largest brands in the world.
We take everything from a live action shoot, we'll stitch it all together, polish it up. So it's all the editing, creative, and technical process.
Off camera, you said Bitcoin could fix film. What do you mean by that?
Film can take a long time. Would be a wise investment to back investor capital for film and retain the value. That is a huge detriment to original storytelling, is a lack of funding.
Welcome back to Hosting Bitcoin, the show where we explore the builders, thinkers, and storytellers shaping the future of money, sovereignty, and human connection. Today's guest is someone who's helping rewrite how Bitcoin is communicated. For her, it's not just about code or charts, it's about culture, trust, and the stories that shape how we see the world. Ali Webb is the co-founder of White Paper Studio, a creative media company elevating Bitcoin-backed storytelling, and a founding member of Forager Collective, a post-production media company that's operating on a Bitcoin standard. Before entering the Bitcoin space, Ali spent years leading creative production for some of the world's most iconic brands, including Nike, Spotify, Cartier, Airbnb, Vogue, and more. And today, we're diving into media, storytelling, and protecting creativity with sound money. Why Bitcoin isn't just a financial technology, but a vehicle that we can use to reimagine the way that we create art. Well, Ali, thank you for joining me on Hosting Bitcoin. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me onto your podcast.
So we got a chance to meet a few weeks ago at Bitcoin is for Everyone in Portland. And just to set the stage for the rest of the conversation, I would love to learn a little bit about, one, how you got into Bitcoin, how you got into what you're doing now, and just a little bit about your background so we can kind of set the stage for what you're currently working on with Forager and White Paper.
Okay, I will try not to be too long-winded. So my journey with Bitcoin started in 2020 when my business partner, Carlos, suggested that we take a look at this alternative investment to protect some of our profits. It was a time when we had time on our hands because it was COVID, production had stopped, so post was winding down. He had the foresight to think, okay, stimulus is going to cause inflation of some kind. We don't know how bad, but it will. So what can we put our money in that's going to protect it? So I said, yeah, let's go for it. You're really smart. I trust you. So we started putting in a little bit every week. We bought one, then we bought two, and then we're like, okay, let's just DCA and keep this going. Work started up again, got really busy, which is great. And then time went by and I was focused on other things. The business was booming. And then, flash forward to 2024 and things are winding down a little bit. Hollywood's been in strikes for a while. So Hollywood's kind of eating into advertising work. And we take a look at what we've built with Bitcoin and it's exploded. We went through the winter, we went through the FTX collapse, we kept going. And I think Carlos I know he'd already done his research and gone down his rabbit hole, but I hadn't yet. And so I was like, well, let me actually understand this. So then I asked Carlos for all his reading materials. I had him sit me down, show me a lot of graphs, explain, some basic finance to me. And because I thought I was good with my money, but I did not understand what we were living in. And beginning of this year, again, it was like the motto was survive till 25 in our industry in Hollywood. And then the fires hit and everything shut down again. Okay, well, what are the best investments we can make? And it's like, well, Bitcoin has obviously proved its worth. And how else can we utilize it? And we were taking inspiration from the treasury companies, from Sailor. And I thought, oh, we can use it as an asset. Let's reinvest in our operations, build up a little bit more in some areas that haven't been given enough attention. AI is here. AI is disrupting things. Maybe we need to, focus more on building our knowledge base there, paying for some programs. Um, and so we tested something internally, got some investment, backed it with Bitcoin, locked that up for our investor, in a 5-year time horizon, and thought, okay, this is interesting. What if we apply it to other projects? Let's back creative work for the long haul with Bitcoin. So that brings us to present day. I can go on, but I don't want, like I said, I'm trying not to be super long winded. And how I started in this industry, I went to film school in LA. I found my way to New York. I landed in advertising. I did not expect to be in advertising, but I found a real love for post production and solving the puzzle of every project, and everything had to move so quickly. And so I think I always had a little bit of an adrenaline rush for those quick turnaround projects and figuring out, the best way to bring them to life, and built my relationships with the creatives, artists, colorists, VFX artists, audio engineers along the way. I loved being a part of that process because deep down, I want to be that kind of creative person. But I don't have that natural skill set. I'm not an editor. I'm not a colorist. I don't see the world the way they do, but I love the way they see the world. So I want to support them, make their lives easier. And so I started Forager with Carlos, where we did just that. We brought together a network of freelance, or, up until then, unrepresented artists in the post-production space who were based anywhere. They didn't have to be in LA or New York or Chicago, the main hubs where they would have to go into a studio to get the work done. The equipment was available, the tech was available for the work to be done from anywhere, which was great. That was 2019. It was a little more uncommon to do the work remotely. And then 2020 happened. And while it wasn't great because everything shut down, it did completely alter the landscape of our business. And people got used to working remotely. So we're a little bit ahead of the curve in that regard. And since it's become the norm. So that was the impetus for Forager, and how we continue to operate to this day, all completely hybrid.
Super cool. And Forager specifically is like post production for projects that are already in process, correct? And then White Papers is totally different in the sense that you're essentially building your own film studio, you're backing your own projects. Do I have that right?
Yes, that is exactly correct. Forager, and I dive into post production, and I realize that not everybody understands what that means. We take everything from a live action shoot, or any of these assets that are created by directors, and we bring together the team that will stitch it all together, polish it up, give it amazing audio, and send it out into the world. So it's all the editing, creative, and technical process of getting it onto a screen in front of you. That is post production. And yes, we would just team up with people whose ideas had been greenlit already. They'd spent a lot of time and effort getting to that point. And we're always very lucky to have an amazing pool of collaborators. And when the industry started contracting a bit in the last couple of years, like I mentioned, for all those various reasons, there was also a lack of risk taking, we felt like. So the creative was also getting just very, I don't know, washed out. It wasn't great. It's pretty hard to get your hands on something that felt really inspiring. And that was also part of the reason why we wanted to start something that we had control over, so we could open up a channel of bold, innovative, different ideas for our post-production team to be a part of as well.
So when we first got on off camera, you said Bitcoin could fix film. What do you mean by that?
Well, our thesis is that film can take a long time. Documentaries can take 5 years or more to make. Short films can be a matter of months, but it also depends on how long the pre-production is, how long you have to fundraise for, and how many favors you're pulling. So maybe it takes 1-2 years or more. So the time horizon of film matches very well with a Bitcoin cycle, which I know some argue is not even a thing anymore, and we can just count on it to stabilize, which would be great. But if we're thinking about Bitcoin's historic volatility, it still would be a wise investment to back investor capital for film and retain the value in the long run. So if you put in $100,000 today, in 5 years, I'm not going to do the math in my head. I can't do that. I'm not going to pretend. But you know what the potential is for it to grow between around 30% or more if we're even taking a conservative approach. So we can separate the investment returns from the creative. So if we take $100,000 and we say to the investor, you will get your principal plus interest back in this certain term between 2 and 5 years, then that is interesting enough to them to know that their money is protected and that they can be a part of making this film without also running the risk of losing their investment entirely. Because that is also a very real risk, is that a movie, doesn't matter how big it is, which studios back it, it can still flop and be a loss. And you can say you were a part of it, your name was on it, but you didn't make your money back. So we want to fix that, because that is a huge detriment to original storytelling, is a lack of funding, because it may not come with all the built-in marketing.
So if I understand this right, and this is such a foreign world to me, but I understand that the film industry is like its own individual banking and finance cartel. Like it's a very strange world where there's a lot of money games that seem to get played behind the scenes. It seems like by integrating Bitcoin into the process of financing a film, that you're actually in a sense like de-risking the investment of getting into a film that otherwise would be less certain, and actually creating performance all the way through the film being made, assuming Bitcoin does well, because it's not just sitting in cash waiting to be deployed throughout that 2 to 5 year time horizon. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, no, that is absolutely part of it. And by de-risking, by changing the time preference from high to low, you can spend more time and resources on the project if it's backed with Bitcoin, because there isn't that urgency to create a return within that time horizon, where in the meantime inflation is eating away at your investment and the cost of it. So you want to be able to beat inflation. You want to de-risk the investment, and Bitcoin absolutely, we feel, is able to do that.
I'm imagining a scenario where you've got a film timeline playing out over, let's say, 3 years, and you're not spending the money on like marketing the film or doing like the last stretch of VFX until pretty close to the end. And by the time you get toward the end of the project, you might actually have quite a bit more in terms of resources to do either one of those things than you did on day one, assuming you've got a good treasury strategy.
Yes, and we've talked to a couple of people in the industry who have gone back to projects they've done and run some numbers. I'm like, oh my gosh, we could have paid for the production. We would have had this much left over for marketing, which we couldn't afford at the time. And, there's always unforeseen overages too. So yes, as long as you have a good strategy, we are very strict about not over leveraging, of making sure we back the films one with the Bitcoin investments. It is not our intention to collapse, by funding too many films. So we've employed all of these safeguards, and yes, the Bitcoin that would back $100,000 1-to-1 over 5 years, we can only imagine where that will take us. And like you said, how much more you would have to cover unforeseen costs.
And why does it help you pick projects that would otherwise be seen as risky. Like it seems like part of the mission is to not just make movies that you think are going to make a profit, but actually, take some creative risks and do some things that maybe wouldn't otherwise get produced by traditional Hollywood studios.
Yeah, I think we're, like I said, we were feeling as though there was a lack of creative risk taking. We want, I mean, as people in general, we like novelty. I think there's grappling with the AI component that's working its way into entertainment and what we're seeing in the content there. So, what can we do to make movies or entertainment content, whatever it is, TV, movies, short films, for people, about people, with people, without having to rely on um, commercial viability, maybe integrating a lot of AI just because it's potentially cheaper. I do feel like with our experience, it's not always the cheaper, faster option. It's good. It's really good, scary good sometimes, but it's not a replacement for, definitely not a replacement for ideas. It's not a replacement for really good visual effects artists. You still have to know how to use it, but we want to be able to be a voice for interesting new stories because we're not a big film studio yet. We want to be able to get to a point where we can make some very cool blockbuster films. Like everyone would love that. I mean, we're taking more inspiration from early days of A24 movies, taking bold stories, the riskier ideas because they're interesting and they're meaningful and they're not just about returning money to the investor because we can separate the two. And again, we can put the pressure on Bitcoin. It's not all we're banking on. Like I said, of course, everyone wants the movie to be seen, get in front of eyeballs, get distributed. There is an expectation that there will be a return of some kind to help bolster the investment. But it can be safeguarded. So we can, get out there and have more of an input in what kind of stories we want to see. Whereas right now we feel like we're stuck in a cycle of sequels and remakes and 100,000 Marvel movies, which like is sad to me because I've enjoyed Marvel movies. I have no hate for Marvel, but you have a really great, series like that, a great IP, and then it does well, and that's then it's built-in marketing, so they're going to hammer that home until it doesn't work anymore, and then that's depressing because it takes away the value that it once had because then people roll their eyes and they get bored and they move on, and then the studios lost however millions of dollars, and so they have less money to invest in the next idea. So I do think that starting small, original ideas will be a natural foundation for building something meaningful.
It seems like it helps with the incentive structure because as you were just describing, there's this hidden kind of push where you just have to keep on producing something new over and over and over again because there is no safety in just sitting and waiting for the right next idea. You have to always be producing something because the hurdle rate of holding your studio's budget in cash means that you're sitting on a melting ice cube. The same thing that Saylor found as he was just treading water with his company. And to me, it seems like it takes a significant amount of the pressure off to just do a project to feel like you're doing a project. Like you can actually sit back and wait for the right pitch and wait to actually work on something of quality that's got meaning because you don't feel like you're fighting against a constantly rising tide that's leaving you behind unless you take on that next project, whether you believe in it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very freeing and invigorating to have that ability to step back and have more say in what it is you want to spend your time doing. Like you said, instead of just participating in a machine, and going back to the Forager side of things, we have great clients, but there's also, and we're small, we're nimble, but there's still overhead. We still need to take on projects just because it's going to bring in some cash flow. And it would be great if I could say, you know what, we're only going to find the best opportunities and we don't have to worry about these things. There's always going to be an element of wanting to continue to be busy and crank out content because we still live in this world where brand recognition will, build upon itself. But I was always adamant that I wouldn't start a production company. Like, that is so much work. We know so many great production companies. We don't need to compete with them. They have a hard job. But this avenue of being involved without being another production company, and having this reliable foundation. You said it's not the melting ice cube. Is so exciting to us that as soon as we had our aha moment, like, we have to launch this. And so we did pretty quickly. I think it only took us maybe 3 months to fully concept our offerings and how we wanted to position ourselves.
So, how does the actual model work with white paper? You've got investors who are looking to finance films, but in the meantime, while you're waiting for a project that looks like it's worth moving forward with, it's held in Bitcoin. Or how does the whole model work, and how's it different than a traditional studio?
So currently, and like I said, we're still very new, but currently we have 3 different products. One is film specific. So we get a project, the budget that they need to get it done. And assuming we are on board, feel like it's something that our investors would be interested in, or that the white paper general investors would be interested in backing, we will fund that, in dollars, and then lock up an equivalent amount of Bitcoin, and we would raise a certain amount on top of the film's budget, which would also go into Bitcoin. So we would always have we would have a new Bitcoin investment, and theoretically that split in the 5-year terms will be enough to actually cover the cost of the film, or, to repay the investor. But should that not be the case when we get to the end of the loan, we have the, one-to-one backing that we would be able to pull from as well. Again, just even counting on Bitcoin underperforming and other headwinds so that we don't overextend ourselves. And then from there, we also have general company funding and investment that ranges in an 8 to 10% annualized return on their principal. So that's the gist of it. For any projects that are coming across our desk and waiting to be funded, just nothing's really happening at that point because we're still building up our investment backing, and we'll shop around the ideas to the investors in case they're interested in backing a project specifically, or if they're more interested in the higher rate of return for contributing to the company as a whole.
So, in general, you're getting pitched projects, and then once you've got one that you would like to land on, then you're turning around and actually getting someone who is interested in backing that through your model, which is this kind of like Bitcoin backed film fund almost, so to speak.
Yes. And we do have some investors, especially the earlier investors, who are more interested in the returns we were offering and the model itself than film. They didn't never been involved in film before. So that's been exciting because there is, I think, a large market of people who would be interested in participating in the arts and in film if it looked more like a traditional investment. And so that's what we have it set up as well. People who are familiar with film, I think, will automatically see the value in this, but would have some additional expectations of maybe profit sharing in a film that we would have to explain to them, is not really a part of what we're doing because we're guaranteeing returns, et cetera. And that would be a different conversation. But yeah, it's like, do we have a pool of money available to deploy to a project that we feel really excited about? We could, if we have enough investors who are just interested in the returns from the company, or do we go out and find someone for a project specifically?
So it's interesting because it reminds me almost of like the way that sailors got these different structured financial products, that some of them are very much exposed to the upside as if you were getting back end compensation on success of a film, and others are just super stable. They're very much insulated, protected. You sacrifice some upside, but you've got a guaranteed return through a product that you want to participate in. And it sounds like, am I mischaracterizing that there's kind of that different tier of ways to participate, or most people coming in with that fixed return where they're just getting a Bitcoin backed film, uh, and a way of knowing that they're making their money back, but also supporting great art?
It definitely is a range and appeals to different customers in, their, I guess, what they want to see from their investment. Carlos was really the orchestrator behind creating these three different products, and he has studied Sailor and what he's doing very well. So yes, there there is the fixed returns, lower return, less risky, the higher risk, higher return. No one is participating in like an equity share. It is just about like a bond, the
Mm-hmm.
fixed return on their loan. Um, no equity in the company as of yet.
Got it. Very cool. But a structured product you can get return on that's correlated to Bitcoin as well as creating films.
Right.
Super cool. What originally got you into this whole space? How did you get into production, filmmaking? You said advertising as well. Like what led you into this world?
Well, like how far back do I go? Like I said, I went to film school, and when I was entering film school, it's one of those hard things where you feel like you have to know what you're doing for the rest of your life. So you pick a path and something that's inspiring to you. And at the time, I thought, oh yes, I want to be a part of storytelling in some way. So landed in screenwriting, and it was a really great experience for me. But leaving there, I thought, okay, I don't have quite the like thick skin needed to put myself out there in the way that writers do, and artists in general. Like I said, I think everything they do is very brave. To create something from nothing, and translate it to something the rest of us can consume. And again, it's your reputation and your ideas out there for everyone to appreciate or tear apart, depending on the day. So when I left film school, like that was great. I still love film. I still want to be involved somehow, but I also was on a track to moving to New York, and just my connections landed me in advertising. Is one of those things, you move to a really expensive city and you'll take the first job you get. That happened to be in an ad studio. But I thought, okay, I'm close enough. I'm going to learn something. And then, found my way into post-production. Really liked that. I did get some experience on commercial shoots through agency producing and then line producing, and found that was not for me. Like, this is also really hard work, and you have to have a special kind of personality for the kind of unpredictable day to day and stress that you take on as a line producer, and so many people that you are responsible for, and making sure everything goes exactly to plan. So much respect for those people. And so once again, like I always been a little nerdy. I like the tech side of post production. I like the routine side, but I do want to be supporting creatives. So at the time when I was agency producing, like, this is great, I'm good with clients, but I really just want to know more about the process of creating, the final piece, the final picture. So I worked more closely with editors and colorists, and everyone down the line, learned a lot. And I honestly wasn't sure that I would find myself back in anything close to Hollywood or films again. So when this came up earlier, the closest we got was grading feature films, but still was like post-production, and it was very, sporadic work. I thought, oh, there's no way, And Carl said, well, what if we were a production company who just handled smaller scale projects? And I said, absolutely not. My stance. I will not be a production company. But yeah, let's find ideas. And he actually had executive produced a narrative project that one of our producers wrote and directed and acted in. He's like, it was a great experience because I got to be a part of the idea. We got to, give the money for the film. I didn't have to do anything else. And I thought, okay, well, that sounds good to me. And like I said, we know so many great production companies that we could leverage to get these ideas out into the world. And we have all the infrastructure for post to, finish the job. So yeah, it was my kind of roundabout journey from film school to advertising to, still in, social content creation. That is still our bread and butter. But then launching White Paper is really exciting because I know that Hollywood's had a really tough time and we're all grappling with these changes and AI and streaming. And it's been a lot over the years that's changed, altered the way that we consume content and compensate artists. But Hollywood still is where original ideas can find life. Commercials, I think, are going to have a harder time. Content's going to have a harder time because they just need so much of it and they need it done cheaper and cheaper because that's also the problem with the fiat system. Let's get as much done for as little money, maximize that. Just sell to people, sell, get them to buy things. And there's been some great commercials we've been a part of, really good, like fun content that is more narrative in nature. I think that's what we're known for at Forager. But AI is creeping in. And so I really am excited about being a part of slowing down to a degree too, slowing down and telling a story from start to finish.
Have you ever felt like you've done everything right, built the business, made smart investments, and yet there's still one piece missing? If you're someone who believes in Bitcoin but hasn't yet explored mining, let me introduce you to something that most people never even realize exists, and that is fully managed Bitcoin mining with Abundant Mines. We help high net worth individuals like you own industrial grade mining infrastructure without ever touching the machines. It's hands-free, professionally hosted, and designed to generate passive income by turning electricity into Bitcoin every single day. It's tax advantaged, it's asset backed, and for many of our clients, it's become one of the smartest moves that they've ever made in their investing career. So if you're ready to take the next step into real Bitcoin ownership, not just holding, but producing it at a discount, visit abundantmines.com. That's abundantmines.com and see why this strategy is changing the game for serious investors. So you've had the opportunity to do work for, some of the largest brands in the world: Nike, Lululemon, Cartier, Vogue, Airbnb. How does doing creative work for brands like that differ from the kind of storytelling that you're really branching into? Like, what's the mindset shift in the work that you're doing now versus the work that you did for companies like that?
That's a really interesting question. Right off the bat, the freedom to tell a story without taking all of the brand considerations into consideration to mind is huge. For obvious reasons and good reasons, these brands have strict guidelines on, what they can integrate and how they can tell their story and how certain things need to look and feel. They're selling a brand and a feeling. So we can take everything we learn from those kinds of pressure, that's kind of pressure in those scenarios, and we can apply it to what we're doing with White Paper and in funding ideas that will resonate with people and be refined. But it is very different. It's less, like I said, less constrained, I think, to be able to read through a script and be taken through a story and not worry so much about what kind of retouching is going to have to happen on something to make that product look really good.
Is there a tension between coming from what I would consider very high production value, like really well orchestrated content, and wanting to lean more into what I would characterize as a much more kind of rebellious and raw frame of reference when you talk about things specifically in the Bitcoin space? Do you feel like there's been a tension there as you've tried to make that shift, or is it integrated? Is there a way of blending those two?
Interesting. I think if we're looking at it from Forager side and the clients that are looking for something more polished, and then yeah, having this double life is being involved in something like a Bitcoin, because I do feel like I lead these two sides of myself throughout the day. There there is tension, but I felt it more before we announced white paper. I think it was that understanding of what we were building, and we knew what kind of path we wanted to forge with the Bitcoin treasury that we had built, and what we were about to do with white paper, but we weren't sure if people were going to be as accepting of it because it's still pretty early, and even though a lot of people know about it, really understand it. I mean, including myself, like I said, it wasn't until earlier this year where I finally wrapped my head around it. Um, so I was more fearful almost that people would, like our artists would not want to work with us or something because they thought that we were doing something totally nuts. And, our clients would go, oh, maybe we need to distance ourselves from these people who are getting into something that sounds like a Ponzi scheme, that kind of thing.
Did you actually
But
experience any of that?
I didn't. I didn't. And it was incredible. Mostly so much curiosity and people that I talked to, because we made this announcement and I talked to every single person that's on our roster. And most of them had a similar story. Maybe they owned Bitcoin, then they sold it, years ago because they thought that's as high as it was going to go, or they still have a little bit, but they wish they'd invested more. They've always been curious, that kind of thing. Clients are like, you got to tell me more about this Bitcoin thing. What are you doing? What does it mean? So actually, we were met mostly with curiosity and people wanting to engage in conversation, which is just what we wanted. Just want to be able to talk to people about it and show them that there is hope on the other side of what we've all been experiencing for the last few years. Whether or not they're ready to accept it and integrate it is a whole other thing, and they have to be on that journey themselves. But once we got over that hurdle, and I realized it wasn't something that people were going to, shut us out over, and they were actually more excited to watch what we're doing. It's like, okay, there is not as much tension as I thought, and we actually can bring this level of experience of understanding what reaches people and what looks good, what resonates to to what we're doing with white paper, which is finding those ideas that are going to transcend all the noise that's out there.
It's so cool to get to have a conversation like that maybe at first felt like a little bit scary, like it could be a risk to your business, but ultimately ends up changing the minds or opening the minds of people around you to something that maybe they weren't previously considering. Um, what do you feel like, or what do you hope that the impact of you leading in this way is on other companies that you get a chance to work with? Do you have like a guiding light of what you hope they take out of you charging ahead and really basing your company on a Bitcoin treasury?
I would love to see more people do it. Ultimately, that is my goal. I would love to see more people integrating it on the balance sheet so that they are less stressed in the long term. Um, I, I know it will create more opportunity and more stability for this industry, or any, really any industry, because we're all going to experience some kind of disruption, and tech is moving so fast. It is, I think, the best way to hedge your bets against what is going to come eventually. Um, and by taking that stress off of the balance sheet, like squeezing everything out of your people and your company, your resources, not taking on risky investments, or for getting a quick influx of cash when times are tough, that we won't have high turnover in the industry and certain companies, and I think we'll have a flourishing of smaller businesses that aren't afraid to get started. That would be my hope. I would love for people to give it a try And it takes, like Carlos will remind me, because I had this fear that what if people look at what we're doing there, like this is a great idea, and then they go out and they buy a bunch of Bitcoin, and then suddenly they're ahead of us or something. For places that are much bigger and have been around for longer than Forager White Paper. And he has to remind me that well, first of all, their buy-in is going to be a lot higher than ours was since we got in 2020, which is still not like, beginnings, but the buy-in is going to be higher, and you still have to hold, and you still have to have conviction. You still have to know that your underlying business model is strong. And you'll just be made stronger in the long run by being a part of this.
Anytime you engage in a creative, like creating a creative work, it's its own sort of inner journey. And I'm curious for you, what has changed internally for you since integrating Bitcoin, not just into your business as a treasury, but actually putting it into your business model? Like what has that inner journey been like for you? Because many people experience a sort of psychological or personal change that goes along with making this kind of choice.
Yeah, from a business perspective, putting off that, instant gratification of payouts. As a business owner, where maybe you're set up to pay yourself guaranteed payments monthly, quarterly, twice a year, or maybe you're on payroll. And as a business owner yourself, sometimes it's like not in the cards that month. It was slow 2 months ago, and now you have to wait, and you want to reinvest your funds into something else, or it's the end of the year and you pay yourself twice a year, and you say, you know what, I don't need to take all of that. I would rather go and buy more miners, or something like that. That your perspective can change there, because you have something working in the background, or even just investing in the Bitcoin itself, so that you're better set up for the long term. It's not just about feeding the machine right now. That low time preference thinking, and then it seeps into your personal life. My siblings make fun of me because now I talk about Bitcoin whenever I can. I'm still in that phase of my journey where I'm annoying people about it. And, uh, you know, maybe I need to buy like some new clothes for an event. And like, so, well, let's go buy a dress for so-and-so's bridal shower. I'm like, I think I have something in the closet. I'd rather buy Bitcoin. So it's that psychological shift of, is this $300 going to be worth $3,000 in 10 years? Am I really gonna, am I gonna miss it? It does totally change your thinking on what you should be using to reward the time you've spent building something, whether that's in a business or earning your paycheck and building, your life the way you want it to be, saving for a home and family or vacation, whatever it is. Realizing that there is a vehicle that will actually do that for you, because like I said, I felt like I was good with my money and I didn't live outside my means. I know what I wanted to save for. But after 2020 and since, it's been shocking to see how little not how little, but like how much, shorter the runway is for a paycheck when you consider how everything has gotten so much more expensive. So the psychological shift of, oh, this is the system that we live in, and what I thought I was doing was correct is actually incorrect. I should look into, this form of security for my future, both business and professionally. That was the biggest shift for me. And I'm still early enough on in my journey where there's going to be other more philosophical or, poignant moments of reflection that I'm sure everybody goes through. And they might be listening to this now and be like, you're just at the beginning. Like, that's not what it's all about, and they're right. It's not. But I'm still getting there. But this is what I think resonates the most with people right now. And again, like I said, my siblings make fun of me. I've sat them all down. I've said, this is what you need to be investing in, and this is why. I just want to see you get the house that you want one day. That's it. And nobody needs anything crazy. We're not trying to, be uber rich or anything. It's just having those things that they've imagined since they were children. And I think that's really what resonates with people right now. And it might be different in the future, but that's definitely what gets people in and starts them on their journey.
What do you think still keeps people away from integrating Bitcoin into their business? I mean, I just know so many people, by virtue of us being at such a low penetration in terms of merchant acceptance and companies that have it on their balance sheet, like there's some mental block. What do you think is keeping people out of integrating this into their businesses?
I think there could be that fear of backlash, which I went over earlier, and I just
Yeah.
don't think that they should fear it. I do believe that there is a technical barrier where people, they don't really understand that once you put in the effort of setting up a wallet and or getting an account somewhere where you can obtain your Bitcoin, that it's so easy to transact. I do think there's even for us, like it would be great if we received payment in Bitcoin, but there's just not enough. Like you said, there's not enough acceptance out there. There's not enough people who are willing to then also part with their Bitcoin right now. To my eyes, it is still store of value, not really being used to spend on your everyday items. As cool as that is, when I go to Bitcoin conferences or I learn of a new business that accepts it, I'm like, that's great. If it's a small enough purchase, I would love to support you and do that. But the technical barrier of actually obtaining and storing, safeguarding Bitcoin is a lot for people to take in. And then once that is overcome and more people use it and realize that accepting payment in Bitcoin is going to be way better for the long term than accepting payment in dollars, then we could see a real like explosion of different merchants accepting it. I would hope, but again, I think that's going to take a little bit longer because people first need to understand it and then be comfortable spending it.
Totally agree. It's step by step, a little bit at a time.
Mm-hmm.
The deeper you go, the deeper it goes. There's no end to the learning journey or how much you can integrate it both into personal and business finances and just worldview. I mean, it constantly is providing an opportunity to reshape how you look at the way that the world is structured. And that's a long journey for individuals, much less companies of people who all come into the business with very different worldviews and all have to sync up at some point. It's a slow road, even for the most
Yes.
innovative companies.
Yeah, and like you said, it depends too. Are you a public company, a private company? How many investors do you already have? Shareholders? It's so I feel lucky because Carlos and I are like of one mind. We're always so in sync, and we've been friends for so long, and it's just the two of us, and we don't have other investors that we have to approach and say, "Can we please do this?" So it was a much faster adoption than it would be if we had those other barriers.
Is there a project that you guys are working on right now that you're most excited about getting over the line and getting produced?
Hmm. So it's always one of those funny questions where you could say like, "What did you have for dinner yesterday?" I'm like, I don't know. And then you ask me what we're excited about. Like, what am I doing? What am I working on? I don't even know. No, we are currently it's kind of it's summertime. It's sort of slow, so we don't have as much on the books. But we did just finish a project for Dove and featured FC Gotham, the women's soccer team. We are finishing up a job, or did just finish a job for Condé Nast content department. We do a lot of projects with them, and they always look really nice. And those are just on the content side of things. From features, we did just have 2 shoots this last weekend for White Paper's first films, and I'm very excited about those. One is a satire on the fashion industry, which is going to be really fun, very silly, and has some really wonderful people attached. So that one, hoping to have something to share, maybe teasers and BTS wise in the next week, and then an actual film by the end of the year. And the other one is a short that, again, should be ready in the next couple of months. That is just like pure fun. This was a very, very early stage concept for White Paper before I think we even had the name White Paper available. And it's just some old collaborators of ours, director, DP, and Carlos will be editing and color grading as well. Or they've worked together for a really long time. So they're going to create this really fun project, great actors in it. And I don't want to say too much because I don't want to give anything away or, get into anyone's, NDAs. But I'm excited to share all of that in the next couple of months. That is going to be super, I think, formative for launching White Paper officially, because up until now, it's been more of a concept. This is what we're doing. This is what we think fixes film, and we can, back original ideas, all the nice things. It's like sounds super idealistic, and it's going to be great, and I know it's going to work. But actually having something to show for it is going to be really fun.
In some sense, it's easier to connect with what the vision is of what you could create through this vehicle before you've had the chance to get way deep in the weeds and in the trenches, and you kind of can lose sight after you've had enough detail-oriented problems to solve in the course of a week or a year. What would you want your long-term impact to be through this company, through White Paper, on the film industry, on storytelling? How do you want this company to impact the world?
Well, there definitely is the honeymoon period, as Carlos reminded me too. I was like, oh, remember when we started Forager? Let's say you're so free, unencumbered. You're like, this is this great idea. We are changing the world. And it is still like that. I mean, I love everything we do in the family of people we work with, but it is that right now where you can, yes, just have an idea and then you realize, oh wait, there's steps to execute this. There's things you have to do. And it's been a bit of a learning curve for us because they're related in, the industry, but they're very different worlds. So, I would say, to bring it back to your question, I again would just love to see more people feeling confident in starting something new and backing it and all of the efforts they put into this new idea, this new company project, whatever it is, with Bitcoin. And it doesn't have to be a whole company. I mean, there's obviously advantages to having a company and tax wise and things that you can do there, but even if you just wanted to have a personal project done, it could be anything. It doesn't have to be a film, but if you allocate enough, you do your research and you understand what it would take to pay back your investment, and you could create something now that is meaningful to you and know that in the future you will have earned that money, in investing. I think that's really life-changing in the way that you think about what it is you want to see change today, but how you can stretch out that investment, into the future. So again, not suggesting anyone take any risky bets and, take on a lot of debt to make a film and buy Bitcoin. But there's a lot of interesting things that you can do and ways that you can integrate it once you really understand it.
Beautifully put. And just so that everybody's aware, nothing on this podcast is financial or business or legal advice. And if it is construed as such, that is not the intention. But that is beautifully put. For people
Thank you for the disclaimer. I am not a financial advisor by any means. We're just dreamers.
It's always in the show notes. do you have any closing thoughts, any wisdom you want to leave in the audience? And if they've listened to this as well and thought, wow, this is really cool, I'd love to maybe pitch my project or potentially invest in any of the projects that you are producing, how can they keep up with what you're working on and maybe even get in touch with you?
Well, you can reach me so many ways now with the two companies. It's hard to keep track of. Easiest is Ali Ali at Forager. That's FORAGER.TV. You can find us on Instagram at forager.tv. On X, you can find us at White Paper, and that's abbreviated to WHTPPR underscore studio. And we can drop these. I don't know if you have show notes or anything like that, but we can drop a
Absolutely.
full list of handles there where you can find us. If you want to talk about, yes, Bitcoin as a foundation for film investments, for if you have a film that you would like for Forager to be a part of, you just want to talk Bitcoin. Carlos and I are talking about, approaching Bitcoin focused companies and offering them, post production or even live action production for commercials. It's what we do. We would love to be able to send more of that out into the world. So we're here to talk about all of it. But yeah, you can reach me any of those places. And I'm just really thankful to have an amazing community of people like yourselves who I have been able to meet this year and are interested in sharing this story and, taking the time to hear us out. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing your time. Thank you for sharing what you do as well. I know that it's a world that many people don't understand. Just like mining, it's very unfamiliar and scary to the uninitiated. But I also know that there are fantastic Bitcoin companies out there who would love nothing more than an aligned team of people who understand the mission, understand what they're working on to help them with their content. So thank you so much for sharing your time, and would love to have you back on again, especially if you guys launch some amazing projects out into the world.
I would love that. Yes, as soon as we have something to screen to share, any updates, I would love to come and chat again.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Ali. Until next
Thanks,
time.
Bill. Thank you.